First, I wanted to just say, if you want to leave your email address in the chat, feel free to do that, and we can keep up to date on what we're doing. And if you're really interested in our goal, which is to close the landfill. And also, if you have any questions while we're doing our presentation, feel free to put them in chat. I'll try to check that out every once in a while, but sometimes when I'm listening, I forget to what I'm going to ask. So go ahead and feel free to type it in as you go along if you want to. Anyway, I'd like to first start by saying thank you for joining us tonight. Most of you know me. My name is Debbie Cooper, and I'm the spokesperson for HEAT. I am a longtime resident of Hartland, and my family is spokesperson for HEAT. I am the father's side in the same house, right across. You can still hear me, right? First, I wanted to just in the chat, feel free to do that, and we can keep you up to date on what we're really interested in. Our goal was board in our presentation. Feel free to put them in dishes. And in the same time, up on the lake the other day about this same subject. And he recalled an article in Time magazine from a long time ago about Hartland, and the title of it was Stinky Town, USA. So we've had that kind of reputation for a long time now. I myself am tired of it, and I want something better for my hometown. When the TAM was booming back when I was growing the other day, I guess we just accepted the smell because of the jobs that TAM created and the business it brought into town. However, now we know so much more about industries like tannery and landfills and the toxins that can cause all kinds of health issues. The town has changed since then, and so did the tannery over the years.
Debbie,
with new environmental regulations,
you're a little garbled. And I'm wondering if maybe by turning off your video, we might be able to hear you a little bit better.
Okay, let's try that.
And welcome to the folks just joining. Sorry to interrupt. Go for it.
Whatever.
The town has changed since then. With the new environmental regulations, we started to clean up the river, and the tannery started buying their hair on them. The odors seemed to lessen, and as a matter of fact, I had not smelled anything for a while. Without even a vote by the citizens, the town administration decided to take in out-of-town waste. We have been told that that was done to try and reduce the tax burden, but I don't recall my taxes going down. Do you? Anyway, along with the added revenue came disgusting odors, especially from my neighbors and fellow citizens up on Martin Street. I decided to go to a select board meeting to try and talk to the board and see if it would make a difference, and have been trying ever since. That is when a group of us who are most affected by the smells, dust, traffic, and other adverse things about the landfill decided to get together and form HEAT. We first met at the library, but subsequently got kicked out of there, so we have changed our meeting place many times since then. We were lucky enough to get introduced to Toxics Action Center, who has changed its name now to Community Action Works, and to Dana Callahan. Some of you may remember Dana. She was at the last vote we had on our petition, and she asked to speak at that meeting, and the people of Hartland voted not to let her speak. So she's going to speak tonight. She and her organization has helped us with our petition drive, the toxic tour, and other things that we have done to further our goal to close it today to protect our tomorrow.
Excuse me, boss. You have a text message.
This is personal for me, and I am passionate about it. Never in my wildest dreams did I ever think I would meet with so much resistance just because I wanted to make my town a better place to live in. People whom I have known all my life saying horrible things and giving me the evil eye. Anyway, we are here tonight to discuss the vote coming up and why we really should vote no on April 6th. I'm just going to stop here for a minute and see if this is Rod. I'm sorry.
Who cares if Rod's on there?
Oh, he says he can't get on. So
Put Rod Peace because he can't even spell his name, for Christ's sakes.
We can hear you on the 207, the 487 number. I'm not sure if you want to be muted or not, but.
Okay. I thought I would start by giving you some of the reasons why I'm going to vote no. At the last informational meeting the town had, Amanda Wade from TRC was talking about how the liner was going to be state of the art and how the town hadn't had any violations since 2009. In other words, making it sound like the landfill was this wonderful place. Well, I can't let that stand without pointing out some flaws in her defense of that atrocity. I pointed out to her that in inspection reports from 2011 and 2012, there were non-compliant issues. And I asked if there was a difference in a violation and a non-compliant issue. She said yes, that during inspections, they would point out things that needed to be changed. And she used the example of perhaps the gate being left open when the operator left for a short period of time. She said that if the non-compliant issue wasn't addressed, it would become a violation. So I asked her, how long did they have to fix things before it became a violation? And I really didn't get her answer, so I have to apologize for that. But anyway, nevertheless, I wanted to read to you from my appeal to the Superior Court on the relicensing of the landfill and from some of the orders from DEP in DEP's own words regarding the Hartland landfill that will show just how long the DEP lets Hartland be non-compliant. I have 4 pages dedicated to that issue, but I won't read them all, of course. I just wanted to read a few so that you can get an idea of what's been going on and will no doubt continue to go on if we vote to keep this landfill open for another 20 years. So some of the violations were, in 1983, the town didn't apply for a new site until after the current site was full. In 1986, a complete application for a sludge disposal area with extended capacity was never submitted and approved by DEP, but the town is still disposing at the existing site. In 1990, the town requested modification to reduce the cover specifications, even though there were leachate seeps occurring on both the north and south slopes. In August of 2006, notice of violation to the town of Hartland for failure to properly operate the water quality and landfill gas monitoring program, failure to submit annual reports, and failure to have a registered professional engineer conduct quarterly inspections. As of 2009, the violations remained unresolved. In the order dated 1983, the DEP said, use of blue scraps and shavings to increase stability at this site will not constitute an increased hazard to the health and welfare of the public, provided the disposal of blue scraps and shavings is used as a temporary measure, and provided that only an amount of blue scraps and shavings is necessary for stabilization purposes is used. And then in 1986, 3 years later, it says in the order, the applicant shall not dispose of paint chips, blue hide scraps, or buffing dust until a waste characterization study has been performed on these wastes, and the results have been submitted to the DEP and reviewed and approved by the commissioner. So I just wanted to let you know that that characterization study was not done until 2019. So 36 years they put blue scrap hides up there and they weren't supposed to. We also have in this order, it says ground and surface water quality monitoring at the site indicates that water quality has been adversely affected as a result of the sludge disposal. Groundwater contamination is occurring beyond the solid waste boundary. And I have heard Amanda say a couple of times that contamination has never gone beyond the boundary. So it says right here in this order that it has. It hasn't gone beyond the boundary in excess of maximum contaminant levels specified in the solid waste management regulations, chapter 400, and significant discharges of pollutant to classified bodies of surface water are occurring. And then we go on and it says the geosynthetic liner within the ditch has stretched and pulled, causing severe creases in the liner. This will load the ponding on the cover and could result in infiltration of the waste, causing additional leachate seeps. Multiple leachate seeps off the east side slope will be draining into the stormwater diversion ditch. Repeat violation. Weekly inspection reports have not been received. Repeat violation. Monthly inspection reports have not been received. Repeat violation. Quarterly inspection reports have not been received for the last 3 years due to non-payment by the town. So I just wanted to, I mean, I could go on, but I won't. I won't bore you with any more. But there is the also the part about the odors, which says, let me just read that one more. Chapter 400 of the Maine Solid Waste Management Regulations requires that fugitives of dust and nuisance odors from the landfill be controlled. But yet, even though the DEP and the town continue to have hundreds of documented complaints about the odors and dust, the DEP still allows the town to operate the landfill in violation of the law. So and not to mention the fact that the relicensing application was made in 1992, and it was left to languish for 27 years before a new license was granted so that Hartland could come into compliance. So can we really trust the DEP and the town administration in the future to protect us in the environment? Because in my opinion, they have not done that in the past. For now, maybe give a little bit of idea of the agenda for tonight. We're going to have 3 speakers, Dana, she's from, like I said, community Action Works, and she's going to speak on the process of landfills. We have Ed Spencer, he's here from Old Town, and he's going to talk about lessons from Juniper Ridge. You think we got problems, right? Right, Ed? And he's also a member of Don't Waste Maine. Hillary Lister is also a member of Don't Speak on The Better Way to Go. And then I just thought maybe we would open it up to any other HEAT members who might want to say anything if we have time. Maureen Stanton, she's a property owner in Hartland, and she's gonna let you know some things that you can do to also help us with our goal. And then we'll have a question and answer period, and then I'll just kind of wrap it up at the end. But why don't you go ahead, Dana, and do your thing. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Debbie, and thanks so much for having me tonight. I first met Debbie and HEAT back in the fall of 2019 and have come to Hartland and have seen the landfill a number of times since then. My name is Dana. As Debbie said, I'm the Maine State Director at Community Action Works, which is formerly Toxics Action Center. And we're an organization, we believe that environmental threats are big, but the power of well-organized community groups is bigger, which is why we work side by side with everyday people to confront those who are polluting and harming the health of our communities. We partner with the people who are most impacted by environmental problems, training them with the know-how anyone would need to make change in their own backyard, because when you and your neighbors know how to make change, you can build the power to transform our world. And as the folks on the Zoom who live, less than 350 feet away from this landfill, knows that there's a big problem in Hartland, and we've been facing huge issues with landfills, all across Maine for the past few decades. And as a state, we need to manage our waste better, but we need to protect our communities better. And we know that sludge odor is more than just a nuisance. It can be a public health threat linked to respiratory problems, in one case, even death. And there's also good reason to believe that the sludge, in your landfill is contaminated with PFAS, which are per and polyfluoroalkyl substances. This is a class of man-made chemicals that are used to make things non-stick. They've been known to be in firefighting foam, things like Teflon pans. And this forever chemical has been linked to really serious health issues like cancer, thyroid disease, and birth defects. So from the dairy farmer in Arundel who found out his soil was contaminated with, PFAS spread from sludge, to Corinna, where at least 7 families have experienced PFAS contamination from linking landfills, to the horrific contamination being revealed from sludge spreading in Fairfield, where over 45 wells have been found to be contaminated at tens of thousands of parts per trillion, which is hundreds of times more than the state's current PFAS guidelines. However, more and more scientists are raising the alarms that, there's no safe level of this stuff in our water. And these farmers, the state told them it was safe to spread it on their fields. It was permitted by the state of Maine. However, it's clear now that we don't know enough about the health impacts of all of the chemicals in sludge, and that there are hazardous practices that are deemed safe by the state, and that regulations that have been put in place to protect public health and the environment aren't strong enough to protect us. And as we do more testing, we're going to continue to discover that our water, our land, and our bodies are contaminated with this stuff. So considering the grave health consequences of PFAS and sludge, my question to Hartland is, why would you expand the landfill? Why would you accept any more of this hazardous waste? As you know, Hartland is not only taking sludge from, Hartland and other communities like Brewer, but it's also taking special waste like paper mill sludge, construction and demolition debris, contaminated soils, asbestos-containing materials, and stuff like construction and demolition debris and auto fluff can contain even more toxic contaminants, which can create airborne dust particles, which is an additional cause of public health threats linked to respiratory issues. And the EPA says that all landfills eventually leak, which means that claims that this new cell is going to have state-of-the-art technology. That's not true. It's not going to protect your groundwater, and it's not going to protect your community. Hartland has already, the landfill has already contaminated wells in your community, and there's potential for this hazardous leachate to continue to contaminate your surface and groundwater in the future. This stuff can pollute rivers, drinking water wells, as well as harm wildlife. And the longer this stuff remains in the ground, the further it can spread. So environmental degradation and the cleanup costs rise dramatically the longer the cleanups are delayed. And so while, the cost of shutting down this landfill today, is a pretty penny for sure, expanding the landfill and waiting for it to shut down for another 20 years is only going to increase the cost of closure further on, and the cost of environmental remediation will increase with each additional year that this thing is left open. And one of the biggest things that I think about as well is that polluting the environment in your community will only put a higher, my cat Winnie is joining the Zoom, will only put a higher burden on people's health. And so you won't only be paying for this out of pocket, but also, people will be paying for this with their health and with their medical expenses. And for all of these reasons, I really want to urge Hartland, I want you to be proactive in protecting the health of yourselves, the health of your community, the health of your neighbors and your grandchildren by refusing this expansion, by shutting down this landfill as soon as possible. And that's all I have to say for right now. Thank you so much for having me. And I will pass it either to Ed or back to Debbie. I'm not sure who wants to take it.
Hello, can you hear me all right?
Yeah.
Okay, good. My name's Ed Spencer. I've lived in West Old Town since about 1977. And great place to live out in the woods until about late 1980s when the local paper mill, the town's largest employer, forced in a landfill, which is about 1.75 miles from where we live. At the time they were close to half, they were well over 1/3 of the town's tax base, employing, like 1,000 people. And it was just very difficult to oppose with any success, though people did try. So the idea was that, and the promise was, it would be for paper mill sludge only, just for the Old Town mill, just to keep our mill functional, and everything was going to be fine. That was going to be it. So they started using it, and it wasn't that long, in about 1995 or 6, and paper mill ownership changed. And by 2003, the new owner, Georgia Pacific, was saying, if we have to keep this landfill, we're going to pull out at Old Town. So before, the threat was, if we don't get a landfill, we're going to pull out. And then it was within 10 years, it was, exactly flipped if we have to keep it. So they did this crazy deal with the state and Casella Waste Systems, who's a subsidiary of them, does a lot of the spreading you're talking about, the land spreading of sewage sludge. Okay. So we've been fighting this, since that time with, we've won some battles, but the stuff keeps coming in. Usually with a landfill, what I've noticed is just because you have a licensed active landfill, the types of waste tend to expand, right? And the volumes tend to expand as well. So once they get their foot in the door, it's like, oh, we can make a little more money doing this, or we got a deal for this outfit or that outfit. So what the talk up front is pretty cheap. So how I got to know about Hartland, I was aware of the pollution in Corinna, that was a Superfund site. And I've been through Hartland many times. Where we live is 2 miles off of Route 43. So if you all headed east on Route 43, it's probably about 50 miles to the corner of Kirkland Road, and I'm 2 miles down from there. So anyways, in the winter of 2020, which seems like 5 years ago, I know, I was in Augusta fighting the state-owned landfill here in Old Town. And I happened to meet Dana Callahan, and she had with her Debbie, and Linwood, and another guy, I can't remember his name. So anyways, we had time to sit down and talk. And the similarities of the situation really hit home with me. And where it starts out as being a mill-owned dump, everyone's trying to help them out, and then it turned into something quite different, and you have frustrations with the DEP for not really living up to their standards, because they're under a lot of political pressure also. And, I just got to say, like, especially to Debbie, I was the first one to really stick my neck out here and complain about it. So I'm up against Georgia Pacific Corporation, major international outfit with a bad track record. My own state is against me because they're all in. This Casella, who is not the most scrupulous, publicly traded company you'll ever find. And also the mill workers, the city of Old Town, all our state representatives, our city council. So I know that horrible feeling of being ostracized. I'm not a minority, but it really helps you to understand what that's like. So my main message to you is, I don't think your town is being straight with you. It's deceptive the way they frame it, saying if you don't accept this expansion, that your taxes are going to go way up. And, clearly some of you people have done research on that, and there are monies available. Interest rates are extremely low. There's a way to close that dump without having to raise your taxes any more than they're probably going to creep up anyhow, right? And, so after meeting with Debbie and Linwood in Augusta last summer, I think it was, my wife and I were out for a ride, and we come over to Hartland, and we went down, I can't remember the name of that side street off of Route 43. And we were just stunned at how close the open landfill was to housing. It's supposed to be 1,000 feet setback, but they were granted an exception what, 30, 40 years ago, and there it is. So you just should not ever have to have citizens of the United States exposed to that kind of smell and blatant pollution close enough for, I mean, my kids could probably throw a Frisbee that far. You know, it's just not right. It's just not right. And to have to live like that. And I know what dump odors are like here. And I know how frustrating it is. Here they make you play guess what the stink is from. So they don't tell you what the categories are, but what's it smell like? Well, if the answers are leachate, hydrogen sulfate, garbage, or one other one, then it's deemed an illegitimate complaint, you know, and you know, the company runs that and they get away with it. So I'm rambling a little bit here, and but my message to you is you have a chance with your democratic rights to change this. You can vote against it, okay? We in Old Town never had the chance. The votes that have taken place, the first one was an illegal vote because our city council went as a group to Augusta, gave their approval, and they never made notice that they were having a public meeting, okay? So, and we've never had a referendum, we've never been able to vote on really any aspect of the landfill. You have this opportunity, and I'd give a lot, you know, to be able to vote. And, you know, you have that opportunity. And so please don't be afraid, and maybe, you know, try to have some compassion for the people who are afraid of their taxes going up. And you could see all kinds of unforeseen expenses if you continue with this, you know, and, you know, including, you know, really the houses that are so close there, they should be given the opportunity to be bought out if, you know, at fair market value, you know, as if the landfill wasn't there, I mean, and, you know, given the opportunity to do that. So it's bringing in more poison to take care of the existing poison problem just doesn't make any sense, especially where it doesn't sound like they've been setting aside money for the closure of this, right? So my hat's off to you for organizing, and I'm really happy to be able to have, you know, just have contact with you people, and you know, just lend my strength and, you know, a little bit of wisdom just from, you know, my own lousy experience with this. And I want to thank Dana Callahan, and we're really fortunate to have her. Toxics Action Center was the first one to help us in 2003. And I also why don't I introduce Hillary Lister, who is just a fantastic young dump fighter, who one of the few upsides to getting involved with this is meeting people like Dana and Hillary who understand what's going on. So on that note, why don't I sign off, and let's hear what Hillary has to say.
I just wanted to say thank you to Ed, though, because his story sounds so much like ours, you know, just doing the good fight. Anyway, thank you, Ed.
Yeah, thank you, Ed, and everyone. Good to be here. So just a little background on how I got involved in this. In part, it's just been from where I've happened to live my whole life. I grew up mostly in Corinna. When I was a kid in Corinna, it was a pretty relatively healthy local economy. There's a grocery store, bank, a lot of little businesses in town, a lot more farms. When the mill closed when I was in high school, that had the major impact of people losing their jobs at the mill, but not just the closure of the mill, but it turned out that the mill had been contaminating the local water supply for decades, and that the water that we'd been drinking in town contained chlorobenzene and pesticides. And so the whole town was effectively uprooted, relocated, and the fact that the water was so contaminated made it so that Corinna really was not able to bounce back from the mill closure effectively. The town did get Superfund funding to excavate the silt and mud in the pond in an attempt to get the contamination out. However, after a couple years of people in biohazard suits working on that, hundreds of tons of sludge was sent down to South Carolina, in that case from Corinna, but it turned out the water supply still had the chlorobenzene and pesticide contamination, so still need treated water and still dealing with the water contamination there. And also near where I actually lived in Corinna was also the town dump, which has been recently discovered to be a source of PFAS contamination for all sorts of neighbors in the area there. So just experiencing being in a town that went from having really a healthy local economy based on lots of small local businesses, farms, natural resource-based businesses, to something that the poisoning of the water supply is going to affect generations of the ability of this community to function. And it's something that a lot of mill towns are facing. I also live in Athens, where we've had similar issues. And I hope by just providing some perspective on that, it might help people in Hartland be able to decide how to effectively deal with what's being proposed and maybe get it under control. Just a little of what looks like going into the dump. At the BEP meeting this last year on the dump, the town manager stated that 88% of the waste coming into the Hartland landfill is coming from out of town, and that amount could increase with the new landfill being built. It's coming primarily from other municipal landfills across, well, municipal wastewater treatment plants from around the state that are treating sludge from a number of landfills around the state. Those landfills are taking sludge, construction waste, and a number of other toxic materials from the surrounding states and Canadian provinces right now. The reason there's so much pressure right now in Maine to build new landfills, especially those to accommodate sludge, and we have the state dump in Old Town that's in the process of being expanded. There's a license application for a 60-acre new dump in Norwich Walk that would be taking sludge, construction waste, and hazardous waste. And then this new dump to be added adjacent to the old dump in Hartland. This is happening as Massachusetts, New Hampshire, Vermont, New York, New Jersey, Connecticut, New Brunswick, and Nova Scotia have all passed legislation and department regulations tightening how waste can be disposed of in an attempt to require waste to be treated, recycled, and kept out of landfills. Maine, on the other hand, has increasingly loosened the regulations on what sort of waste can be disposed of in landfills, and effectively made Maine the cheapest place to send waste that other states would be having to pay to treat, process, and do something other than landfilling with. And as Dana mentioned, PFAS contamination is a major concern, especially as both the state of Maine and surrounding states have started testing landfill leachate and other sludge materials for these fluorinated compounds. And in the state of Maine now, there's thousands of tons of biosolids that are contaminated with PFAS that in the past would have been spread on agricultural land, playing fields, which was a problem in itself. Now with the new regulations, those materials though are just going direct to landfills. So Hartland could be seeing significant increases in the volumes of these wastes that are already known to be contaminated with PFAS. The license requirements for the new landfill in Hartland would not require any treatment or even necessarily testing for PFAS. And another source of sludge for Hartland is likely to be porta potty sludge. In Plymouth for about 10 years, they were dealing with a company called We Care Organics that was importing porta potty sludge from New York State and disposing of it, including spraying it on fields in Plymouth. The town had major concerns, odor complaints. That was finally shut down. It's not clear where the waste from there is going now, but I talked to one of the selectmen in Plymouth and they believe that that waste is probably going to Hartland now. They had been told that was where it would probably go. Similarly, Casella Waste also operates Hawk Ridge Organics in Unity Plantation. That's the largest biosolids composting facility in the Northeast, and they take municipal waste, industrial sludge, biomedical sludge. They compost what they can. However, there's significant amounts of materials that come in there that cannot be turned into compost, and those materials are landfilled. It's unclear where they're being landfilled, but Hartland could definitely be a destination for that. Another major concern with the way this Hartland license is being processed, I've never seen this before. The licensing is being done on a 1992 application. So there's a 28-year licensing process for this sludge landfill right now. That's completely unheard of for any business. The licensing is being done under 1989 regulations that allowed a landfill to be sited closer than 1,000 feet to a residence. So again, this couldn't happen anywhere in the state of Maine and probably much of anywhere in the Northeast at this point to have a sludge landfill 300 feet from people's homes. And the only way that's being able to happen in Hartland is the Department of Environmental Protection is allowing a continuation of a license application that was first submitted in 1992 and are using these regulations from the 80s and 90s that are not allowed under current standards, but they're applying them here and allowing a licensing which would allow a sludge dump directly in people's backyards. At the BEP discussion of this last year, several members of the Board of Environmental Protection did express concerns on this. The chair, Parker, stated that he has concerns about the setback applying to landfill with a new waste stream. The landfill permitted in 1986 was for a particular type of waste from the tannery, a particular use, and importing materials that were never intended to go there seems like a change of use. However, the DEP has not made any effort to require the applicant to apply for a new license or for a change of use. This is something a restaurant would have to apply for a new license for a change of use, something dramatic change of this. However, there's a lot of concerns about conflicts of interest within the Department of Environmental Protection in this particular licensing process. The person at the DEP who was in charge of both oversight and licensing of the Hartland sludge dump between, I think, 2010 and 2016. That person both was notified of violations, aware of violations, failed to enforce on them, and when they left the department, they went to work for the consulting company that is now working for the town of Hartland to promote this dump. The staff member at the DEP who took that person, it was Amanda Wade, who's now with TRC Solutions. When she left, Lou Pizzuti was put in charge of enforcement at the DEP, and he's also in charge of licensing of this landfill. At the Board of Environmental Protection meeting on this license, he stated that he has been depending upon Amanda Wade, who is now the consultant for this project, for his guidance on how to process this. And he stated, when I took over as project manager, I knew it was my job to get this facility relicensed. So you have someone at the agency that's supposed to be providing equal balance and oversight for the public as well as the applicant, who sees it as their job to get this applicant their license and has been effectively looking the other way when it comes to violations and when it comes to what really should be require a new license due to that are perfectly legal conflicts of interest, but still would seem to compromise any decision made in this. And then just another piece to be aware of is that sludge as a material is probably the least desirable material to put in a landfill. Landfilling any material isn't great, but sludge produces significant amounts of liquids, leachate, and gases. In the past, the best management practices for landfills have been dry cell landfills. You want to keep it as dry as possible. Here, the sludge that's coming in, it's not being dewatered. It's a very wet material that creates stability problems with the landfill. And as has turned out to be the case in both Old Town and Norwich Walk, they're having to bring in larger quantities of other sorts of wastes, usually oversized bulky waste and construction debris, in an attempt to stabilize these wet wastes. Hartland already had problems in the past 5-10 years with slides or slumps, subsidence events at the dump where part of the dump just let go. As you increase the amount of sludge, you're increasing the chance of these sorts of slides. In Norwich Walk back in '89, there was a major slide like that that resulted in the size of the dump doubling and contamination of local wells and water supplies. This is always a threat, and when you put a heavy wet waste on that, you're really putting the local water supply at risk. There's already been instances of contamination. There's a small stream that seems to still go through the landfill itself or between the old landfill and where the new landfill would be sited. This is all feeds into the Sebasticook. And I know there have been concerns that if this isn't permitted, taxes in town will go up. However, if this is permitted, the town is committing itself to an industry that will push out other industries. It will push down property values. And Hartland is a destination for vacationing, for fishing, camping, hunting, and these are all things that if there are major odor problems, if there are water contaminations, people will find elsewhere to go. And Hartland will lose the tax revenue that it could be getting from these other businesses. In Athens, when we were imposing, there was a construction and demolition debris incinerator proposed for the town. Opponents of that incinerator were told if it wasn't approved, the town was going to lose tax money, the local school would close down. However, what happened when the incinerator wasn't approved, the developers instead built a pellet mill. Other local businesses ended up moving into the area, and we've been able to have a variety of local businesses thrive in the town, and the town has seen no loss of tax revenue by making the decision that it does not make sense to give one industry control over the economy of the town. It's something we've seen in mill towns over and over, that you can't put all your eggs in one basket if you want to have a healthy local economy. Having a sludge dump that's going to be targeted for endless growth from all sorts of communities around the Northeast that have the resources, that have the income ability to get rid of their wastes, to make this problem go away. If Hartland opens the door to solve their problem, that's going to be a nonstop source of materials that is really going to shape how Hartland is thought of in the future and the ability of people to live there. And once you lose a healthy water supply, that's not something that's easily comes back. It's a multi-generational problem. So I'd be happy to answer any questions. I actually need to go for about 10 minutes, but I will be back on here for Q&A afterwards. And thank you.
Thanks, Hillary. Debbie, do you want to take over or pass it to Maureen?
Yeah, I just want to say thank you to Hillary. That was very interesting. She had some very interesting information. And then, yeah, go ahead. Why don't we just turn it over to Maureen now? Go ahead, Maureen.
Thank you. I just, I have a lot of questions. So after I do this, I'm going to ask all my questions, but I'm a newcomer here. Thank you for including me. I appreciate everything that everyone has done over the years. I bought property 5 years ago and I'm building a retirement home. So Hartland was the place I was going to come and live and spend my retirement. It was my dream, really. I didn't know about the landfill when I bought the property, but certainly to Hillary's point, I would be looking elsewhere if I were in my position 5 years ago and buying property. for my dream retirement place, I would not be looking at Hartland had I known about the landfill. So I think that's very true. I think it's really detrimental for future development and quality of life in the town, especially for the people that live nearby. But what disturbs me more than anything is the silencing of, an actual balanced perspective for the town. I did attend one town meeting and I asked what I thought was a reasonable question about why isn't the tannery contributing something? And the town's attorney, who I assume we're paying a couple $100 an hour with our tax dollars, literally started attacking the messenger, me. And he never answered the question. And I've sent 14 questions into the email for Hartland, and I've never gotten one answer back from that email. So the process of inclusion and engagement and, taking everybody in town who has a stake, all the stakeholders, and having a dialogue and figuring out what we want for the town, it's just not happening. This is just being railroaded through, I think, with one side of the story. So I started getting active when my brother met Debbie, and he told me about it. My brother and I own the property together. And so for a couple of things that I've been doing and that I think people can do, first of all, I can't vote. So I feel really bad about that. I would have instantly changed my voter registration to Hartland if I'd known, but it's too late for that. But you can vote no on April 6th. And the town's equation is if you vote no, you're going to have a higher taxes. That is not true, because citizens vote on the mill rate increases. So you can vote no and then vote no for the mill rate. If it passes, you can still vote no to not raise the taxes. The town would be forced to do something else and to look for other funding. And I think there is funding out there personally. One thing people can do is join HEAT on Facebook, put your email on the list and become active and involved. You can write letters to the editor. I wrote one to the Bangor Daily News. It hasn't been run yet, but I'm going to follow up on that. And if anybody wants any language or a copy of my letter or anything, I mean, I'm a writer for a living, so that's, sorry? So that's what I do. And I'm happy to help people write letters, or you can use my language or adapt it or whatever. Talk to everybody you know. If you're there in town, talk to your neighbors. The vote in 2016 or 2000, whenever it was to expand the first time, the letter that went out today to everybody in Hartland says, universally passed. This was a landslide vote. It's not true. The vote to expand the last time represented 10% of registered voters. Less than 200 people in town are making the decision, to expand. There are 1,100 registered voters. There's 1,600 people who live here, and that doesn't even include the part-time residents. So all the stakeholders are not really weighing in on this. So the people voted, but it was a small percentage of the people in actuality. You can hand out flyers. We made some flyers for this. If anybody wants to have the flyer, I can send it to your email. You can print out some copies and hand it out. I wrote to the select board members. They haven't written back to me. I wrote 6 months ago and they did write back to me, but they didn't do anything. I looked at the comprehensive plan for the town. I saw that there are many other really good ideas for development in Hartland, but this is the only one they are actually looking at or have looked at for years. They're not following the plan to create a riverside walkway. That's not something. So my belief is that the vision you want in 5 or 10 years is the one you start working on today. So that's why it's very disturbing that they're putting everything into this instead of thinking, what do we want Hartland to be like in 5, 10, 15 years? And then finally, I think everybody should write to our elected officials. One of the things that I find a little bit upsetting about the town meeting is that people, I think sometimes our administrators forget that they work for us. We, the taxpayers, pay for them. They are public servants in service to us, the people. So the fact that they're not giving us the whole side of this means they're not really being good public servants. I wrote to Senator Collins, Representative Golden. I wrote to Janet Mills. I wrote to Angus King, but I actually got, and Chris, the town manager did write to some of these representatives. I saw his letter. It says it asks for money, but it doesn't do anything else. I wrote a letter to Senator Collins. I said I would like a meeting, and her legislative aide has called me, and I'll be talking to him Thursday. And what I want to get, what I want to get from him is what other pots of money besides the COVID relief fund are available at the federal and state level. And I want to see if I can get Susan Collins involved in some way to, I don't know what the right word is, but strong arm the tannery maybe the tannery can make a charitable contribution to closure, which is a win-win for the tannery. They get a deduction, we get the money. I don't know what's been tried by the town. When I asked that, I was literally attacked at the meeting. And so I don't know what they've done, but I think the more that our representatives hear from us, you know, this, in this case, the squeaky wheel gets the noise. I mean, they work for us. They're our paid public servants, if you will. And if they hear from more and more citizens, they're going to be attuned to this issue. Our press release that went out got some traction. The Bangor Daily News wrote a story. It was a neutral. They had to get both sides, but at least it brought the issue out there and made people aware of it. And then Debbie, I think, talked to a television reporter this morning as well. So those are all the results of what we've done. But I really feel like we need to get this side of the story out, because so many people that are voting on this and that are, you know, are really just thinking in this terms that the town has framed it in, which is, if you don't have more sludge and expand the landfill, you will have almost $4 per 1,000 mill rate increase. For me, that's $1,100 more a year. It's a frightening thing, you know, for people in one of the highest tax towns. Our tax rate is the third highest in Somerset County. We're already highly taxed here. And so the idea that we're going to be taxed higher is frightening people. It's a bread and butter issue, but it's I think a faulty equation. It's a flawed equation to begin with. So I just had so many Zoom meetings today. My voice is going, but so I'm new. I really appreciate everything everybody has done here, and I'm willing to do anything I can to help, because I really feel like this is a bad direction for Hartland. Everything that Hillary said seems like, and you know, and Ed and Dana and Debbie, you know, it's not good. This is not what we want Hartland to be defined by. And I think we have choices. I think that there can be, you know, a plan to raise the money to close it, and we can seek those pockets of money with much more aggressiveness than I think the town has, at least from what I understand what the town has done. It doesn't seem like people in the town have been rapping on the door of, you know, Senator Collins and Representative Golden. When I did ask about what's been done in terms of talking to representatives, Chris Littlefield mentioned Baldacci, and I was like, Baldacci, wasn't it like 5, you know, how many governors ago was that? I mean, it's a long time, and I'm not sure they're actually, you know, banging down the door and really trying as hard as they can, because this is what they know how to do. And this seems like a good solution, and they're in their little enclosed thought circle, and they're not letting other opinions in. They shut down Dana from speaking. They're not answering questions I'm asking. They're attacking me if I'm asking difficult questions of them. I don't know about other meetings, what happened, which is why we really need to spread the word to everybody in town. And I'm not there in town because I don't live there yet, because my house is being built, but I hope everybody who lives there will talk to your neighbors about it and demand answers from our town elected officials, and, you know, Chris and the Board of Selectmen, and then our elected officials in Augusta.
Thanks so much, Maureen. Debbie, do you want to?
Maureen. Why don't we open it up to anybody else who might want to say something? Feel free to do that, and then after that we'll get into the questions and answers.